Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Amazing Race Rewind podcast, the podcast where we rewind back in time to watch the earliest seasons of The Amazing Race for the first time. My name is Andrew.
And I'm Jill.
And we're here to talk about season 4, episode 10 of The Amazing Race. Jill, overall thoughts?
I can't tell whether this was a travel-heavy leg or whether it was good in its tasks. Like, I don't know. It was an overall decent leg. That's what I'll say.
You know what? I really enjoyed this leg.
Oh.
I thought it was probably one of my favorite of the seasons. I thought the tasks were interesting. The roadblock was a little bit questionable, maybe safety-wise.
Okay, we have a lot to come back to on that.
I thought the detour was fun and interesting with the two options that they had. Fun to go to South Korea. There was a little bit. It was a little bit interesting. Some of the travel stuff, like you were saying. And some of the allusions to danger with North Korea being so close.
That I think my issue as a whole of the episode stems from getting to the roadblock, doing the if it wasn't for the roadblock, I would have really enjoyed the episode.
Oh, you didn't like the roadblock?
I didn't like it. I didn't like the setup of it. I didn't like how they had to get to it, but we'll get to that a little later.
Yeah, that's true. But okay, so final four. Here we go.
We're starting... but before we get into that...
Yes, I forget.
We have quite a bit of housekeeping. You would have seen this in the post on the Buy Us a Coffee page, but Season 4, Episode 8 was our 50th episode, and we forgot.
50th anniversary.
Sure, 50th anniversary. So, thank you for listening, so we could get to this. Here's to next... We're going to make it to 100.
We're going to make it to 100. Let's double it.
Yeah, also, we have quite a few comments, I don't know what you'd call them, correspondence to go through here. You guys have been very, very nice and reached out quite a bit.
Okay, so first, let's talk about the Millie the Mole thing and where that originated from. Because we thought that this was something that John had just conjured up in his mind or something. But it is indeed a reference that we didn't get.
Thank you to Max, who so kindly... cleared this up for us. We are clearly a little uncultured on that front. It is from Austin Powers?
Mm-hmm.
Just like the original film, or?
I suppose, yeah. I don't know.
Some of our listeners may have already understood that, just didn't bother to reach out to us, which, thank you for just letting us live on in delusion. But yeah, next off, we also got an email. We had an email this morning, actually, regarding our comments about the non-elimination legs. And that we need to just hold tight a little bit longer because starting in, was it season 5, they kind of started incorporating them a little bit earlier?
Yeah, they started incorporating them a little bit earlier. He says he won't spoil too much. And he also says that he's really looking forward to season 5 because it is highly regarded as the best season.
Crazy. And the last thing that we kind of want to get out of the way is, this is from a little while ago, but there was a YouTube comment on, I believe it was episode 4? She's So Catty.
Episode 4.
Yeah.
This was really shocking to me that somebody knew this or went through the time to go on Google Maps and look at the distances between all these different locations. But I don't have the comment. But essentially what she was saying was that, because we were talking about Tian and Jerry going to the fast forward versus the detour, and she pretty much said it didn't make sense for them to go to the fast forward because the detour was so much farther away and they would have had to drive so much more. And she broke it down. I don't know why I'm saying she, it might have been a man. Broke it down and takes 200 kilometers to go from here to there, 125 to go from there to there, 50 to go from there to there. It's like, wow.
It was very thorough.
Have insane knowledge about this show.
And we'd love to hear it, and we thank you for thank you for sharing it with us.
Absolutely.
So that kind of concludes the long overdue housekeeping we had to get out of the way. Again, always we love having you send us stuff. We love, all this, the lore, deep dives coming up. Please keep sending it our way, but let's get into the episode.
Yeah, let's get into the episode. Okay, final 4, here we go. Starting in the northern coast of Borneo, and they're kind of talking about here, setting up how Kelly is the only woman left. And at this point, I was saying, I hope it's not an all-male finale, because that would be horrible.
See, here's the thing. I hope it isn't, but I also just don't like Kelly and John. I want them
Yeah.
out.
I thought they were your favorites.
Oh, yeah, back in episode 1. Then I got to know them a bit better. I don't like them as a character, as a team, and I would just rather have an all-male finale.
Okay. Well, I was saying no. I say that's a little bit too much for me. But
Okay.
also, I was wondering, what's the best that a female team has done? Nancy and Emily? Because they made
I
final...
think so. Yeah, because Nancy and Emily made it to Final 5, I think. Season 2... There weren't many all-female teams in Season 2.
Yeah, it was Mary and Peach.
They did pretty well, though, actually. They might have got... Did
Yeah.
they get to Final 5, too,
I think
maybe?
they're like 6 or 7, maybe. I don't know. And then as for 3, I don't know.
No.
Yeah, but female teams at this point in Amazing Race history had not done overly well.
Mind you, we don't have... I don't know why. We don't have any female teams. It's not going to be their year this year.
No. It just kind of got me thinking about the kind of gender divide here, I suppose.
Yeah. But you know what? Season 5 is so highly regarded, maybe we'll see something there.
Some girl bosses on that season.
Some girl bosses.
Riken and Chip are departing first at 10:26 a.m., and they are instructed to go to the Puji Si Temple, which is the largest Buddhist temple in Borneo. And they have to search through thousands of Buddha figurines for one that has their name on it, where they'll find a key to open a rattan bag with their clue. I
liked this setup of kind of beginning instructions. I thought it was a neat way to deliver the info.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so they pretty much make their way to the temple, and then there's like a large pillar of all these little Buddha statues, and they have to search through for the one that has their name on it. Yeah, it was nice, good to see them go to a Buddhist temple and do it in this way rather than just having a clue box there.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I thought it was a very creative way to do this. Mm-hmm. And also, basically, so once they get the clue, they're instructed they need to go back to Seoul, or back to Seoul. They need to go to Seoul, to the Seoul Tower, which will come into play later. But vans to the airport leave directly from this temple in 30-minute intervals. And there's 30 or an hour?
30 minutes.
30-minute intervals, but the vans can only take one team at a time. But in the case of Riken and Chip, because they are further ahead, this time thing really doesn't impact them. So it gives them the space and time to kind of take in the temple. And I think it's Riken who's really quite enjoying just being there and being present.
Yeah, they talk about having this like spiritual awakening of sorts at this temple and kneel down and pray, etc., etc. So that was good to see. Very interesting. So yeah, so because they were like 2.5 hours ahead of everybody else, because John and Al departed at 12:56 a.m.
and they were about 4 hours ahead of Kelly and John.
Yeah,
which I think, again, this has been a season that's been pretty close. That might be the largest gap we've had.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't been thinking about that, but that is true. The fast forward really helped them get ahead by quite a bit here.
Yeah.
Last episode. David and Jeff departing as well. They're talking about their strategy before was to picture themselves as being, I guess their strategy in general was to picture themselves as always being in last so that they're motivated and wanting to try anything that they can to stay in.
Which is a good way to think of it.
It's a good way to think of it, but I feel like also if you're always thinking you're in last, I feel like you won't play as aggressively. It does change the way you're making decisions.
Oh, 100%.
Kelly and John says that Kelly says she's going to give the boys a run for their money. And that they said that their strategy was to be relaxed.
Excuse me?
I don't know. I don't think they've been very relaxed. I don't think they've been successful in that. But they say, you know what? Now that it's the final four, we're going to kick it into high gear. No more relaxation.
Tell yourself what you need to tell yourself.
Kelly has a quote. She says, "The wrath of Kelly is fixing to come out." And then John says, "I think the wrath of Kelly is fixing to come out on John." Which, fair enough, because I think the wrath of Kelly has come out on John quite a few times.
Yeah.
All right, okay. So we get to the airport.
It is, I think, Riken and Chip get there. It is closed. And they're trying to figure out the best route from where they are in Borneo to Seoul, South Korea. And honestly, once all the other teams get there too, this is a very interesting airport sequence, in a sense.
Yeah. There is a little bit of drama here. So Riken and Chip are the first to arrive. They get their flights booked, and everybody else just like follows suit. which is kind of a common theme here, where everybody else will just like book the exact, say like, oh, can we just book the exact same things as what they got? But so everyone books their flights, but David and Jeff, they decide they're going to be proactive. They're going to put on their Millie shoes and search for an earlier flight from Singapore to Seoul. And so they get a standby ticket for this, and John and Al also get a standby ticket for them. And then while they're showing they like pan over, or they cut to Riken and Chip like opening a menu and like indulging in burgers and fries as these other teams are working.
Yeah, Riken and Chip, I believe, have a quote where they're like, something along the lines of "finally some American food."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, David and Jeff, John and Al have standby tickets on this faster flight.
And this comes around very interestingly because, yeah, like, well, Riken and Chip and Kelly and John kind of stay behind. They go with their flight path. They're not looking to change things. When it comes time for the standby tickets to, you know, come up and see if they can get on, I forget exactly what the agent tells David and Jeff, but basically, like they've paid for the ticket fully. They're there. And she says something about, like, what is it? Like, they weren't verified or weren't, I forget. Do you have it written down?
I think they bought the ticket, but they weren't on standby or something. I don't know exactly what it was.
It was basically like they bought a ticket, but they didn't give all the, like, she didn't take all the info that was needed for them to be considered on standby. Like, it was a screw up on her part, the ticket agent. And David and Jeff, rightfully so, are mad about this. And he's like, how is that fair? Like, we've paid for this ticket, and now you're telling me I can't get on the plane. And it does work out for them fine. Both David and Jeff and John and Al get on this earlier flight with standby tickets. But it was a weird little moment of, I didn't quite understand what the issue was, but there was an issue.
It was a weird moment. And so eventually, yeah, when it does resolve, you can hear that there's a voiceover. Clearly wasn't the woman who was at the counter saying, okay, I can put you on the flight. But it was just like a random woman saying this.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, clearly she didn't actually say that. They just like inserted that random audio clip in, which just sounded like it was a very like automated, robotic.
I'm sure I heard it. I just probably didn't clock that it was not diegetic.
Yeah, I was like, this is curious because yeah, it sounded very, very strange. Regardless, John and Al and David and Jeff both go to Seoul via Hong Kong. And Kelly and John, they get left in the dust once again, along with Riken and Chip.
Yes. So David and Jeff and John and Al do get the advantage when they arrive in Korea. And like we said, they have to go to the Seoul Tower. And from there, they are instructed to go to Sundam Valley, which is quite literally miles away from the North Korean border.
Yeah.
A couple things come up here is they realize quite quickly that the language barrier is a lot harder to overcome than it has been in other countries with their cab drivers. That also really comes into play with Kelly and John and Riken and Chip, so we'll get into that a little later. But David and Jeff and John and Al decide they're going to share a cab, which I think is the first time we've had this. And I have to make this comment. I have to make it. They looked like clowns in a car.
Just shoved in there, clown car moment.
Genuinely.
But yeah, so they decide to do this because where they're going to the roadblock is 3 hours away, and they decide they're just going to split it so they don't have to all spend the money on individual taxis. But I think this is probably the biggest language barrier we've seen
easily
in the series. Like, nobody is able to communicate with their taxi drivers, or I guess the vast majority. And it's like such a huge deal to try and get an English-speaking taxi driver. And I do find it interesting to see how the teams try and navigate and communicate with their taxi drivers when there's just like zero understanding from either party.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I think, is it Riken and Chip in this episode where they just make the decision very firmly that they need, like, even if it takes some extra time, they need an English-speaking cab driver. Yeah.
No, I think that was this episode and next episode as well. Kelly and John arrive, as well as Riken and Chip. Riken and Chip said that they were so shocked that they were going to South Korea in the first place. And John talks about how freaky it is to be so close to North Korea. But yeah, we do see Riken and Chip. their taxi driver immediately has no idea what they're wanting from him, and they're very stressed, and they're going to be very stressed for a lot of their time in South Korea. So they get him to take them to a hotel so that they can get directions from the hotel, and that the hotel can order them, hopefully, a English-speaking taxi driver.
Yeah, and so like we said, they have to go to the Sundom Valley to... It's like a rafting company or something, like a river rafting company. Here's my thing, though. Like we said, this place is minutes away from the North Korean border.
Yeah.
And also, not even that, you have taxi, you're asking... To me, what should have been done is they should have had chartered cars to take the teams. Because, there's a point where David, Jeff, John, and Al are in this car, and the taxi driver is going the complete wrong way. They can't speak to him. They're driving alongside tanks on the road. The tanks are like motioning for the car to turn around. To me, they should have had chartered cars because, like I said, A, it's way too far a distance, and B, you're in a very minimal... It's a rural area that really probably doesn't have a lot of tourism, and there's no English. So it was giving the risk of like last season with the officially detained.
Yes, that's what this was reminiscent of. They shouldn't have ever gone here in the first place, because they do just end up going back to Seoul anyway. Okay, let's drive 33 hours away and then go back to Seoul anyway. And
this is why I had a problem with the episode. It was because of this, the location of this task, but also the roadblock itself. So what ends up happening, because David and Jeff, John, and Al in their shared cab get lost and have to turn around, and they're struggling to communicate, so it takes them a while to find the place. When it comes to the roadblock, Riken and Chip actually get there first. And then Kelly and John, and the thing is you have to take numbers, so it goes Riken and Chip, Kelly and John, David and Jeff, John, and Al, correct?
Yeah. Salad moment. And Riken and Chip are shocked, because I think they were expecting to be in last, because they took the time to go to the hotel, and there was... But I guess they didn't realize that everybody else had the exact same issue.
So they all are waiting there, and this is also kind of the first time, too. It's like they waited for all the teams to show up before taking them to the roadblock. And arguably this was the worst... I'm going to say, like, the worst roadblock I've ever seen, because I think the point of the race is that... No, because... And it goes against the point of the race. The point of the race is that at the end of the day, it should be willpower alone that can decide whether you can or can't do something. It shouldn't be the physical inability. And also, there should not be a risk that a task can physically inhibit you or impact your health.
It shouldn't be whoever doesn't go into cardiac arrest wins.
Yeah, so let's explain that.
That's pretty much what this task was.
Yeah, so... Like we said, they're at this rafting company. However, it's winter, and it's all iced over. And what the task is there's like 2 holes in the ice and a rope going between them. And they have to get in this freezing cold water, swim under the ice, like following this, like they can pull themselves along this rope, and then go up the other hole, but cannot leave until they are cleared by a doctor that their body temperature has come back down to normal. Who thought this was a safe idea?
Who thought this was a safe idea? And they've done this in season 1 in Alaska, but it was different. Didn't they just have to dunk under or something?
That was it. You just had to dunk under, get your head under, and come back out. Like, it wasn't like you had to be under there for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
There was no doctor. I remember us saying, like, it seems like they should have had a doctor, but it was just like a polar plunge. This is, like, I mean, they had divers underneath the ice in case something went wrong. And to me, that is too far, because also someone could decide to like do this roadblock, and then I mean the doctor before they go is asking all these questions about like their heart, like have you ever had like you could say like, okay, I'll do this roadblock, and then be like, okay, well, I have heart problems, like I can't do this, like what happens then?
So what happens then? You get a penalty because you have heart problems. It's like, what?
Like that's the point, is the race should not fit, like it should not physically endanger you.
Yeah, and it was done with a lot less care than the Alaska one, because I remember the Alaska one, like, they took time to make sure that the contestants were acclimated to it. They had to, like, dunk their head in the water before. Here, they just jumped right in and swam under, and that was it. Like, there was so much more room for things to go horribly wrong.
And I couldn't, so Chip decides to do it for Chip and Riken, and I'll be honest, like, I couldn't watch, because you've got all, like... The other 3 teams are, like, standing there. John and Al are trying to lighten the mood. They're clowning around. Yeah. Riken looks completely terrified. I couldn't watch. And it's just, yeah, oh my gosh. And the thing is, they're also, like, they're not given a wetsuit or anything. They're fully, like, just in their swimsuit.
Pretty much just underwear, yeah.
And then they come out. I mean, Chip was okay, actually, when he came out. Like, they immediately kind of towel you off, bring you into this tent, have this heater blowing on you. But I think it was when John did it. Like, he was blue.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, Chip goes first. He just zero hesitation, goes right under, comes out the other side. Whatever. When John goes, Kelly tells him, I don't know if you heard this, but Kelly's like, "You've been in water colder than this." It's like, what? Where? When? How?
Also, it to me, it's not the, like, yes, obviously, it's the shock of the water temperature, but it's the fact that you have to then, like, it's different between dunking yourself and then being like, "Hey, get under, swim under," knowing you're swimming under thick ice. I don't know.
Okay,
I didn't like this task. I had a lot of issues with it.
Yeah, and, like, what if your muscles seize up and you can't move?
That's what I mean. Like, the race should not, like, no, like, they were very lucky that nothing went wrong, but if it did, how do you account for that? Like, it's purely the race's fault that someone became physically inhibited.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Anyway.
So, but despite this, nobody really freaks out or anything. Everybody just is kind of cool, calm, collected. They just kind of go through it.
After Chip goes, I think that when they built it up when it was Chip going, where it's like there's tense music and everyone's like biting their fingernails.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all very, like, solemn. Like, everybody's, like, so scared for everybody else. And that's where you see John and Al break into their song and dance to try and lighten the mood.
Which I do appreciate, but time and place.
Time and place.
You mentioned this before, but the whole task, like, they go all this way through all this trouble only to go back to Seoul. They're instructed to go to stop, what is it, 220, subway stop 223 or 228 in Seoul?
228, yeah.
Yeah, so they have to just go right back to Seoul.
Yeah, but I said, subway task for you. It's not really a task, but they go to the subway.
I love a good subway task. I love a metro system. I love a subway. When we were in Montreal, I bought myself a shirt with the Montreal Metro on it.
Yeah, public transportation super fan over here.
It's more just the aesthetic of a map like that. Like, hello, I've got one on my wall right now.
Please. Yeah, I don't know if many other people can say the same.
There are. There's a special group of people like me.
Okay. So, because there's a little bit of drama here. So, because David and Jeff shared a cab with the clowns, there's this kind of a moment where, editing-wise, they make it seem as if David and Jeff are going to steal the cab and just, like, leave the clowns stranded, which I fully thought would happen, but that didn't. They just waited for them.
No, they waited for them, but they make it pretty clear once they... And they kind of come back to this as well. They're like, yeah, looking back, this is actually a really bad idea. Because that's it. Now they're both in last because they got there last. And so David and Jeff just say right away to John and Al once they're done the roadblock, okay, we'll drive closer to and then we'll get you guys your own cab.
Yeah. To me, it's giving allies having to split up from each other in the Hunger Games so that they don't have to kill one another.
How on point.
That's what I thought of with this. So yeah, they decide they got to split up.
Coming back into Seoul, they hit traffic. And it seems like this is kind of where some teams start to panic, I would say. Kelly and John argue with each other and decide that they're not going to leave their cab. However, Raken and Chip, because again, their cab driver speaks English, so they're asking, like, is it quicker to stay in the cab, basically in traffic?
Yeah.
Or, because they start seeing subway stops, they're like, or should we get out? And the cab driver just tells them it'll be quicker to get out and take the subway there. This is a move that David and Jeff also make. But then again, David and Jeff are further behind.
Yeah, there's a couple moments here. So when Kelly and John are arguing about taking the subway, Kelly wants to take the subway. John says, we don't want to take the subway. And they're going back and forth. And then Kelly was saying that she hopes John gets eliminated just so he learns that a-holes can never win. And then when David and Jeff, when they get out of their taxi and they're just trying to, like, navigate on the street, they're trying to, like, talk to this local and they don't understand what she said. And then she just pauses and she goes, I'm right. It was so funny. It's like, yeah,
it really was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Kelly and John actually, I'd say Raken and Chip get to the subway station first, but because they're on the train, they're kind of scouring the lower platform first and make their way up. So they get to the clue box right after Kelly and John. but Kelly and John had the advantage of getting there by car. So
Being
when
on
they
the street.
when they enter into the subway station, the box is right there. And this is where we meet our detour.
Detour, which was strong hands or strong stomach.
If this was us, we're doing hands. I don't even need to know what stomach is. We're like, it's not a question.
Okay, strong hands is where you must break 3 sets of wooden boards using Taekwondo techniques. So you pretty much just have to punch your way through 3 sets of boards to receive your next clue. Whereas strong stomach is where you have to go to a restaurant and eat a bunch of slimy, suctiony, live, squirmy octopus. Like a full plate of this.
You each have to eat a plate.
Yeah.
For some, and I guess they don't specify on the card. I think they just say delicacy. Raken and Chip choose the eating task, which, why? Kelly and John go to the strong hand, but...
So I think the reason, what it was, because David and Jeff did the octopi task also, but...
Octopi.
But I think they said they did it because it was so close to where they got the clue.
Oh, I see.
I think that's the reason.
Yeah,
why.
I don't care. Because I feel like they
Yeah.
spent so much more time trying to eat it than...
Talking about the worst or hardest tasks
Is up there.
Eating task is up there. Yeah, because this isn't season 1, let's eat fried bugs or whatever
That's
they
it.
have
Is
to
here,
do.
these are live octopus and when they start eating it, they're like, ew, it's suctioning to my teeth, like...
Yes. And it's like, yes, still moving around because what they do is they like chop it up, but I guess like they're still alive. So it's like a full heaping plate
Squirming
of these
octopus
live
that is like moving off of its
octopus.
plate, off of the plate.
Yeah, it's just a horrible sensation to
That's
imagine.
it. Like,
having to eat
I
this.
understand it's a delicacy and that, some people, it's probably normal or they enjoy it. I'm very, like, I will eat a lot of food, but when it comes to meat or fish or, like, anything in that realm that's new, I get in my head very quickly and I get, like, my gag reflex kicks in. So that's it too. Like, both Raken and Chip, when they're trying to go for it, but they're gagging, they're, like, struggling to keep it down.
No, the Western palate is not built for this.
It really isn't.
It's not at all.
And eventually, I think it's Chip who... I can't tell whether this is him trying to take Raken's mind off of it, but he's like, oh, do you remember what we had at our wedding reception? And he was like, oyster shooters. So what they start doing is putting little pieces of the octopus into water and taking it like shots.
Mm-hmm. Which was a smart idea.
Yeah, I think that's what
them.
saved them, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's what saved them. But, okay, yeah, so Raken and Chip, they're struggling with this eating task. And we go to Kelly and John at the Taekwondo task. Which also has its issues. So John is tearing through these boards, no problem. But now here comes Kelly. She throws her first punch, doesn't break a board.
And she's injuring... That's the thing, it's another task where... It's kind of like the lobster trap task, where...
It is.
There's a clear male advantage. There's a clear, physically fit advantage.
Yeah.
Because Kelly... Spoiler alert, this really, she manages to do it, but this, it bangs up her hand pretty good.
Yeah, but, I can't imagine, that would hurt so bad, punching as hard as you can into, a thing of wood and it doesn't break.
Well, and that's it, is Kelly, she gets one, but then realizes she has to do 2 more.
2 more.
And I think what her final push is John going, that's my face, and then instantly she just rips through it.
She harnesses the anger towards John and channels it into her fist, punching through it. But this was also similar to the lobster task, where all of the men who did this had no problem at all. Kelly was the only one who had an issue. Same thing with the bull thing in India, where Tian was the only one who had an issue. All the men didn't have an issue. Where they should have made it okay, the women have to break thinner boards.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Proportionate strength.
Yeah. They shouldn't be every single person doing the same thing. But yeah, again, it's a different time, and I guess this is one of the kinks that they haven't quite worked out yet with the race.
Yeah, no. And like we said, they do it, but especially in the next, spoiler alert, Kelly and John, everyone makes it to the next episode. But This does impact Kelly in the next episode because her hand is so it was bleeding and so swollen that she can't actually close it to make a fist in the next episode. We'll get to more of that later.
Yeah. So they do end up completing this faster than Riken and Chip can complete the eating task, and they are on their way to the pit stop at Gyeongbokgung Palace, which is the largest royal residence in all of Seoul.
Yes, and again, editing makes it seem like it's a close race between Kelly and John and Riken and Chip. I think Kelly and John are maybe about 8 or 9 minutes ahead of them. Mm-hmm. And they do check in first, and Phil has a great outfit on here. He's got this fur collared coat and like a patterned turtleneck. It was a very, very great outfit.
Yeah. Well, when Kelly and John reach the pavilion, it seems like they're in the wrong place. They're just kind of running around aimlessly, and then they reach Phil, and then once Phil tells them they're in first place, they go, "Are you kidding me?" in unison. And it's the first leg that they've won. They're happy, and I was kind of happy for them too.
I just don't like them at this point, so
yeah, to me, I think they're the only team that's interesting to me at this point.
Here's the thing, they're interesting, but I feel like in terms of do they deserve it?
Yeah.
Maybe, because I here's the thing. I look at a team that kind of also had that dysfunction who weren't our favorites, like a Tara and Will. The thing about that, though, is both a Tara and Will pulled their weight. They were strong racers. They were, they at the end of the day, they did earn their spot. Here, I just feel like Kelly and John just keep slinking by.
They keep slinking by, but you know what? They had the upper hand in this one and got first place in Seoul, Korea. Winning a trip to the sunny Caribbean, courtesy of the American Airlines website.
Indeed. Riken and Chip in second. Like we said, they're not too far behind. Cut to David and Jeff and John and Al, who, like we said, David and Jeff also make a wrong turn on the subway, which reroutes them quite a bit. And they decide to start at the eating task.
Yeah. So David
Keyword
and Jeff, they pull up to the restaurant. And as they're walking in, they say, "Oh, hopefully the Korean delicacy is pizza and Budweiser." And then once they sit down and they receive their plates, there's a quote where it's like, "Oh my God, they're alive, David."
Yeah, he's like, "There's eyeballs and everything and brains."
Yeah. So they try to do it, but they immediately realize this isn't happening.
Sends them back to the Taekwondo task, which is where John and Al went first.
Yeah, and John and Al have completed this already, no problem at all. Power through this, boom, 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 broken boards all over the place. These boards are flying all across the air. It's kind of cool, and I appreciate the Taekwondo aspect of it.
Yeah, but again, it the difference between Kelly and John doing that task and John and Al is evident.
Yeah.
John and Al do not struggle at all.
Okay, so it's between the clowns and the goats. It's pretty clear that John and Al are going to be in third here, which they are, and David and Jeff do end up in last.
However,
Phil lets them know that luckily for you guys, this is the second of 3 predetermined non-elimination legs, and they're still in the race.
And they are quite pleased.
They're quite pleased. Well, yes, as one would be upon surviving and receiving a non-elimination leg. So yeah, that's that episode. I thought, I really liked this episode. I think it was probably my favorite of the season. It's yes, okay, there were issues with the roadblock, and with the design of the leg. But I thought South Korea was a really interesting location, and one that we haven't been to before, that provided new challenges.
Roadblock aside, I did enjoy it. I wouldn't say it was my favorite leg, but it was very entertaining.
Yep. Yeah, it was an entertaining leg, despite it being non-elimination, which we knew was going to happen and we hate. But
yeah,
we persevere. Yep.
Anyway, so that's the episode. You know the drill. If you have something for us for the deep dive, amazingracerewind@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at amazingracerewind. If you want to buy us a coffee, leave us a post or a comment on our post, or just follow just to get email updates when we post episodes, go AR Rewind on the Buy Me a Coffee page. Am I forgetting anything?
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, 5-star
course.
review. We love to see it. And we'll see you next week, where we'll be diving with sharks, and there's going to be a heights task.
And
So,
a very special guest.
stay tuned. And a very special guest. Absolutely. All right. But until then, see ya. Bye.
Bye.